record. My apologies, I forgot to record previous meetings, so we are back on the record now. Are you guys able to see the see my screen all right?
Yeah, can do.
Yeah.
All right. So in keeping with the cadence, good morning. It's our Aether TST meeting. It's Tuesday, January 17th, 2023. We'll start today's meeting talking about release content. I don't know that there's a lot to discuss in this area, but we'll go through it and then we'll jump to release status and operations update. So on the 2.1 content, I know Scott is not available. Are there any comments, Sean or others, with respect to any content changes on 2.1?
Yeah, so we released a new version of the rock umbrella chart, and there's still a couple of issues there in relation to 5G deployment. Really, it's just to do with the default value for SD, the system descriptor, I think. And there's a problem with cube spray deployment. This is for Aether in a box, but really, I guess there. Would you say there? Would you say that's a release problem or not? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think that's not so much content that's putting together all the components of the release. So we can talk more about that particular issue, but it's not a matter of us wanting to either put in or remove functionality. It's
no, that's it. Yeah. So nothing really. I mean, the Helm chart really, that update has brought in, updated values of all the components such as atomics and honest config and all of those kind of things. So as far as rock is concerned, that's all we wanted to get into this 2.1 release, and we're finished with it, I think.
Okay, that's good to hear. So now on the 2.1.1, I'm just using a placeholder numbering here, the short-term changes for atomics. What's the progress there and the prognosis for delivery?
Yeah, so so we had an issue number. I thought it was on the this was the one that Jordan gave. Was it on the previous meeting? Oh, yeah, 1606. Yeah, this one in the second last paragraph. Yeah. So that's what I'm taking as the short-term atomics changes. The patch is in there. I've verified it works. I know Amit was trying to verify it works. And I know he got into trouble with cube spray. But really that was unrelated. So I think we need to get back to Amit just to check if he's happy with 1606, and then we can merge it, but it will be an extra step to bring it into the stack. So yeah, it would be a 2.1.1.
Okay. Sounds good. Amit is Amit joined? See him here, but he's usually on.
Don't see him. No.
Okay. Well, I'll see if we can get an update from him out of band. Okay, and on the larger drop of atomics changes for early April, any planned changes of content approach here, or is that continuing as planned?
Yeah, we have a meeting about atomics straight after this one, and I'm expecting to get some updates from that. So I haven't any other updates for you, besides what we get from that.
Okay, we'll hear from you next week then.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Appreciate that.
Okay.
Amol, how'd you like to tell us how the 2.1 status is going? Can I share the slides you put together?
Okay. Okay, or otherwise I can share. Anything is fine.
Okay, I've got it up. Can everybody see it?
Yeah, I can see. So hello everyone. So this I put everything together in the slides. What's the progress, what test, and what is the current status, and what will be the action plan for this week. Please next slide. So wiki has been created to give the details about artifacts and release details. So docs has also be tagged. So we need to update the Aether release note that is remaining. Aether system test is also tagged. VMs which we need to for the testing has been created. Currently, we are using the old image that is Ubuntu 18.04 because we are dependent on UE. Aether 2.1 test has been created too. Next slide, please.
A quick question for you. Are you
Sure.
saying that the VM that we need both VMs, or that you have now
No.
created an Ubuntu 20.04?
Yeah,
VM for the release?
20.04 is means I have created the image which can be used if UE is going to be updated.
Which is required for Ether 2.1?
Ubuntu 18.04.
Okay. So
Yeah,
the
that
20.04 is just a preparation step.
correct.
Thank you. Okay.
So next slide, please. So the testing that we have Aether system test and Aether in a box repository make test. So these two kinds of test we normally conduct. So Aether system test mostly depends on NG40. So I'll cover one by one and give the details about all of those. Next slide, please. Okay, so rock GUI test, I'm not means I think Sean can comment more on that. So currently Aether GUI test has not been set up for Aether 2.0 release, but it was being set up for Aether 1.5 release. And the API version for the rock was 4 and 3. So I have summarized what are the details and the errors in the test results. So Sean, if you can click on that, then you can see the details. So I would like to know what kind of API version is valid, because I think that this might be old, which is not even carried out.
Yeah, it is. The API version will be 2.1.0.
Okay, okay. Because I haven't seen that file in the AIB. So can you
Yeah,
please, yeah, can you please
it's
update that so that I will all the jobs, and I think that will resolve those errors.
where is it in Ether in a box? It's in the
Uh,
repo, is it?
yeah, I'll let you know in the offline.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, thank you for explanation. Next slide, please. So, Sean, what I did means I was executing those GUI tests, uh, but as you said that those tests are not even valid, so there is no point in discussing those errors that it has occurred during the execution. But I observed that the errors, the atomics.io v3 beta 3
Hmm.
and v1 beta 1, so those errors was not there because I changed the rock 2.1.33 hem chart to rock 2.1.30 and the errors gone. So
Right. Yeah, there's a document on docs.etherproject.org. Do you know this one? Maybe if you can just, whoever's sharing, Siva,
Yeah.
just go to docs.etherproject.org.
Hang on a second. Sorry. Docs.
.etherproject. Yeah, you have it in a tab, I think. Yeah. Third one.
Project. Okay.
Yeah, and they're in, if you just go down the left down to development. Yeah,
Rock
Ether Rock
development?
Development Guide, yeah. So this, yeah, down here I've got a table showing the compatibility. So yeah, if the Rock umbrella version is below 2.1.32, then you must use Atomics controller and Atomics Raft. But after that version, you must use Atomics runtime.
Okay, but okay, but if you see the previous jobs at that time, I'm using the Atomics. Oh, I have to. Yes, I have used the Atomics controller and Atomics Raft, the current version. If you can you go to the slide, Shiva, please.
Mhm.
So if you see the upper two jobs, Atomics controller, the same slide. So Atomics controller 6.9 and Raft 1.26. So I have used the same.
Yeah, and that's why you're getting no match for storage profile.
Okay. Okay. Anyway, so those are the errors that I want to point
Yeah,
out.
that's the, so just use Atomics runtime instead, and those errors will go away.
Okay. So I actually also have a question regarding the Atomics runtime, which I will cover in the next slide.
Okay.
So can you go to the next slide, Shiva, please?
Can do.
So these are rock test APIs. So current jobs are in the black. So Aether 2.1 and the Atomics API version 2.0.0 and 4.0. So those are the current uh, current jobs that we are running, and couple of them have errors, and 1.6 have no error because they are depend on, I think, the same explanation for this also.
Mm,
Can you go to the next slide, please? Yeah, because they are showing the same errors.
yeah,
Yeah.
makes sense.
So okay, so I'll let you know the
Yeah,
next
so
API.
I should just explain that, you know, we had a numbering scheme where, you know, we had Rock release, you know, I forget what it was, 1.5, and it had an API of version 3. We had Rock 1.6, and it had an API version 4, and the whole thing was getting confusing. So we said, in future, if we have a Rock release of 2.1, it will have a model 2.1. And that's where the 2.0 and 2.1 came out of, you know. So like if you look at the second last line there, that 2.0 is what came after 4.0.
Okay. Okay.
Right. So you know, 2.1 will support the 2.1 API and the previous 2.0 API. So basically we support two API versions in a release. So that's why 2.1.30 will not support the 4.0 API. So you should, when a 2.1.0 API becomes available, you should put that in your tests with this 2.1.30.
Sure. I'll update the test so that both test. So the new single file will be used for API as well as a GUI test. Am I right?
I don't know really. I don't know those tests at all. So I can't say.
Okay. Okay. Let me first change that, and then we can see how it goes. Because I also don't have knowledge about how many tests, because it shows that there are 78 and 60 tests about APIs.
Oh, I
Okay.
see. Yeah. Now the API has changed. So the 2.1 API will be a lot different even than the 2.0 API.
Okay. 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 I'll get back to you on this
Yeah.
regarding how many tests.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Sean. Next slide, please. Okay. So currently we have 4 tests on AIAB 2.0 Cube Spray and 2.0 RKE 2.0. So currently all they are executing on Ubuntu 18.04. So the release 2.0 is stable, but the current what currently we are working on has some problem. So the atomics runtime problem that I was talking about is only to the Cube Spray, and Andy has cleared that this might be related with the version that Kubernetes means Kubernetes Cube Spray is using some Kubernetes version that might be old, so maybe error. But I have a question regarding one, that normally when we run on run test, we normally use atomics runtime only when we are working on the master. When we release, we use atomics raft and the atomics controller. So atomics runtime error, so if we will release 2.1, so atomics runtime error will go away. Am I right? Andy, probably.
Oh, sorry, that was a question to me. Well, so like Sean was just saying, I think it depends what version of the rock we want to release as part of 2.1. If we release a version of the rock that's 2.132 or later, then that requires atomics runtime. And so in that case, until we resolve this issue with why atomics runtime doesn't install on Cube Spray, then the 2.1 release just, wouldn't work on Cube Spray, or at least the rock wouldn't.
Okay.
Yeah. And I strongly suspect your suspicion is right there, Andy, that this atomics runtime will require a Kubernetes version greater than 1.20.
Okay.
So can I interject as to the importance of continuing to support Cube Spray? I mean,
I think the only users of the Cube Spray version of Aether in a Box were the SD core developers, and they probably don't even really care about the rock. They just care about being able to spin up SD core services. So if we remove support for Cube Spray, or left it in for the SD core people but didn't document it, maybe that would be fine.
or document it, what the shortcoming is, what the limitation is. I think that would be probably the appropriate thing.
Though you raise a valid point, Larry, in terms of if it's really not being used, why are we testing it and marking it as deployable? Yeah,
well, there's a related question here, which is what is really the distinction between Aether in a Box and SD core in a box? Since well, for the reason that they're essentially the same as far as I can tell, at a high level anyway. So maybe Cube Spray is supported in SD core in a box because they need it for development, but you step to Aether, then it's not supported. I don't know.
Since the context of which we're discussing this is Aether, it's probably sensible for us to just talk about how you deploy Aether and therefore Aether in a box.
I agree. I'm just making there is a related from a how do we explain ourselves to the rest of the world?
Yeah, no,
SD core in a box is essentially Aether in a box, since there's nothing in Aether in a box except SD core. Well, and the rock.
Right. So they are distinct, even though there's a large overlap in terms of Venn diagram.
Okay, so I think it's resolved. Set that aside. Document the limitation of Cube Spray.
Do we continue to test on Cube Spray for Aether in a Box? I would suggest for 2.1 we should, if for no other reason than to clearly identify limitations, and we can make a decision whether to stop or not on a next major release.
Let me try sometime whether we can be successful on Cube Spray. I will update that in the next meeting.
Perfect. Thank you, Amol.
Okay. So,
Also, I just wanted to say I got the impression from Amit that GS Lab were using Cube Spray. I don't know their reason for doing that, but he was seeing he was repeatedly trying Cube Spray. So maybe it's just something to check with them. Why are they using it, and can they change to RKE?
Yeah, I mean, it might be because they're mostly focused on the core.
Yeah, and I'm reluctant to make as large a change as, you know, saying we don't support something within weeks of a release.
okay.
Because we honestly haven't had time to understand who actually uses it and doesn't use it. So we'd be making the decision, I think, without understanding the true implications of it yet.
So Andy, did you know if there is a Cube Spray version that supports a higher Kubernetes level?
I don't know, but yeah, that seems like an obvious thing to look into. Probably there is, but I don't have any experience with it.
Okay.
All right.
I'll work on that, and let's see how it goes, and I'll update in the next week.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
So regarding RK2, after Sean, after update of 2.1.33 ROC hem chart update, the 5G test failed in this case. So so can you go to the next slide, please, Shiva?
Mm-hmm.
So it keeps waiting after ng setup request. Means I even tried on Cloud Lab machine also.
Yeah, I
it
should interject here to say, through the genius of Andy, we also have a solution for this.
I like that, the genius of Andy.
Undisputed genius of Ether in a box.
The
Yeah,
undisputed genius of Andy. The marketing team's really working well here for you, Andy.
So what it is the SD, which is like system descriptor in the slice, needs to have a leading 0 in it, in the hexadecimal value. So yeah, that's what Andy figured out, and this passes then.
Okay.
And is this related to the fact that we've changed from changed the way the numbering is done, like from integer to string?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. We decided to go for.
That'll bite you in the ass.
Yeah.
All right. Good.
Okay. Yeah. Previous slide, please, Shiva. So the same job failed, means actually that job is unstable job. So sometimes UE get the IP address, sometimes UE doesn't. So that's why I marked the status unstable. I know the 5G test failed after this update, but the UE doesn't have an IP. Those tests failed couple of times before 2.1.33 update. So I'm not sure.
So Amal, I think when you say the UE doesn't have an IP, you're referring to the 4G test?
Yes.
Yeah. In the case of the 4G test, this has been a long-standing problem that sometimes with OAI sim, the simulated UE just doesn't get an IP. I've looked into it a little bit in the past and haven't really come up with any insights as to what the issue is. But yeah, that's been there for quite a long time. And I think it's just a limitation of or some issue with the way that we're using OAI sim. I don't think we've really seen this happen in like an actual deployment.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, I understand. Thank you for explanation, Andy. Because I was confused that whether should we consider that or should we not consider that as a successful job, because most of the time it is successful. Sometimes after 3-4 job it fails and says that UE doesn't get the IP address.
So it's
So thanks.
you are seeing an intermittent failure, not a consistent failure.
Yes, not a consistent failure. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Andy, for the explanation. And let's go to the next slide. Next. Okay. So these are the testings that we have. And next slide. And only these are the testing that we can do with respect to 2.1 release. So SD core testing and SD system testing requires NG40 machine. So that's why those two test cases we cannot be covered in 2.1 release. However, I talked with Ajay, and he said that SD core, most of the functionality they did manually. They tested manually. So we are good to consider that SD core is a stable. Badri, if you want to comment on this.
Yeah, I think we generally do that. I think the AIB testing is kind of a regression test for us, covers the basic procedures. And whatever other tests that we like, whatever features we are adding, we do like test pod kind of a testing. We mock UPF or we mock AMF and then add features into SMF and test it like that. So that's probably not automated, and that's why it's a manual test. So that kind of gives us a confidence that, okay, the functionality works. And then we test with AIB and see that overall integration works with all these features.
Okay. Okay. So that's the status of the test that we can. The next slide, please. So the action plan, release note need to be updated. I think Scott is not here, or Sean or Shiva, anyone. So I have created in the first slide, I have created the docs version. You can update there also, or you can update wiki. I can update docs, whatever we can work on it. So AIB test needs to be done successful. So there are only so after this discussion, we can ignore the UE getting IP problem, and only the problem is 5G test fail that can be overcome within 2 days. About runtime problem, I will work on the Kubernetes, and maybe I'll ask help Andy, Kube Spray and Kubernetes coupling. But that if that will be done, then we are good to go for the Aether 2.1 release. Another point I want to ask, that the UE image is, I think it is on your private repository, Andy?
That very well could be the case. I don't remember.
Yeah, because I have tested, means I have seen that it has been hosted on your private Docker Hub. So means, are we continuing to do that, or do we have to relocate to ONF's Docker Hub? What do you think?
From my perspective, it probably wouldn't be a bad idea to relocate that image. You don't want me responsible for it necessarily.
Yeah, means I thought the same point, but I thought maybe you are working on it, so that's why you kept it in your private repository, Docker Hub.
To be honest, yeah, I don't remember the historical reason why it ended up in my Docker Hub, but I think it was probably just expediency. I needed to store it somewhere, and so I chose my private repository. But yeah, I think it can be moved to a more official place.
Okay, that's great. So we will work on that, and I think those are the only points remaining for the Aether 2.1 release.
So just for closure on that item, Amol, you're going to figure out the right place for it to go and then work with Andy to get it transferred.
Yes.
Great, thank you.
So Go ahead.
Sorry. And we would also need the SD core release, which is we still have to. We're working on it. We probably will release it by next week beginning for the SD core 1.3, and I think that will go along with Ether 2.1, right?
No problem. Just let me know. Means
Okay.
you guys are updating the Helm chart, right?
Right, because yeah, for Ether 2.1, what are the images that you're using and what are the Helm charts you're using? Probably we will update that.
Yeah, no problem at all. So we can, if you want to push 1.2.3 into the Ether 2.1, no problem. We can include that.
Yeah, just let me know when you're going to do it. Before that, we'll update it.
Sure, sure.
So, Amol, I think this was something that was asked before. You've done a good job putting the test matrix here.
Mhm.
I think just ensuring that we have the defined set of components and version numbers for Ether 2.1 and all subsequent releases, of course, so that we pick up things like, are we grabbing a new version of SD core or not? Because we have to be able to set expectations of what are people getting.
So these rock tests are independent of SD core.
No, I realize that. I'm just saying in the same vein as this matrix.
Okay.
We need the matrix of what defines Ether 2.1.
Okay.
Okay.
So I think if you go to the wiki page, I have mentioned everything go to first third slide. So can you please click on the first? Yes. Okay. Do you have authorization to access? Okay, so expand all here, left side menu, expand all. And if you see AI AV release, correct. Now you see here SD core chart, the SD core rock umbrella, atomics version, atomics raft, atomics runtime. And recently, Andy has updated atomics 0.2 to 0.1.9, trying that maybe 0.1.9 will work, but it gives the same error.
Yeah, so I think this column Ether release 2.1 needs to be filled out.
So actually, the latest will be replicated there. The latest what you are seeing in the latest column.
Yeah.
It will be replicated exactly the same.
As of right now, but at some point in time, latest will continue to move forward.
Yeah.
And release 2.1 gets locked at a certain number, and even along the way, pieces of this will get locked down because we're not just going to pick up the latest of everything.
Sure. So once we will do release, I'll update that column, and we will continue to update latest column.
Yeah. Also, just be careful. There should be nothing in Atomics Raft storage chart under latest. It should just be blanks.
Yeah.
And the same with Atomics controller, because for latest now it's using Atomics runtime chart.
Good point.
You can edit it offline. Just making the point.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for explanation, John.
Also, I was just looking at the page on the Ether docs. So you were talking about release notes, and
Yes.
just on the last tab you have here, the last browser tab, I think, see that,
Sure.
yeah, down there on the left-hand side, there's Ether 2.1 release.
Bottom. Yes.
Yeah, and I presume this is what you're talking about in terms of this is where the release notes go.
Yeah, this is where the release note go. So I have updated some of the numbers, like bottom numbers, but just fill it out, the rest of
Yeah,
the
yeah. If I see anything
words.
that needs to change here, I'll make a change. But I know we went through this exercise with Scott before, and most of it got covered, but just wasn't finalized.
Yeah. I have
Okay.
also added a couple of tests, but I actually want to write there that we haven't done testing for 4G and 5G through Jenkins. So I don't know whether I should include that or just ignore, or I can write just manual. Can you go up a little bit, Shiva?
Mhm.
Yeah, these Aether system test. So as you guys already know that we could not able to do it for 2.1 release. So should I have to mention here that?
Yes. Yeah, we should be clear in our disclosure that we did not execute them.
Okay, I can write that.
People need to know what risks they're taking, and we're saying we did not do these tests.
So when do those tests start to get automated as part of Jenkins? And do they ever? And if so, when?
So those tests were conducted previously on previous release. As we don't have QA2 set up, that's why we can't conduct those tests on Aether 2.1 release.
They are automated. They're just not capable of executing.
So is that because they're all dependent on the NG40 system?
Yes.
Okay, got it. Separate question, if I could ask, is it's not on this page. I'm going back a bit, but in a bunch of places, Amol, you talk about a kind of quote UE image unquote, and I think that requires a newer version of Ubuntu. Is that the same thing as the OAI sim, or am I? I mean, I thought that the only artifact that required the older version of Ubuntu was the OAI sim, and
so actually OAI sim and UE, they are connected, but I don't know how. Means I don't have a technical knowledge to explain that. But OAI sim
does somebody else here kind of understand that relationship?
Yeah, the simulated UE used in the 4G test is built from OAI sim. It's a component that they release. So we use their simulated UE and simulated eNode B. And you're right that is where this dependency on Ubuntu 18.04 comes from.
So Andy, if they have released newer version, then if we can update that newer version, then we can use the Ubuntu 20, right?
Yeah, I mean, if they have a newer version that doesn't have this limitation, then we could use a different version of the operating system. I think that's right.
Okay. Thank you for explaining. I'll go a little deeper and let you guys know what is the status there.
I guess, is there a necessity or a strong rationale to moving forward on Ubuntu? Or is that just moving
Ubuntu
forward
18,
for the sake of moving forward?
Yeah, moving forward, like for example, Ubuntu 8 is quite old, so it looks good to that we are supporting Ubuntu 20.
Yeah,
That's the only
it
thing.
supports it's an LTS release, and it runs out in April of this year. I think it's going to be 5 years old, and they're going to stop giving security updates to it then.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Okay, that's it from my side. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Anything else? Any other issues people need to raise? Going once, going twice. Sold. That's it for today then. Thank you all for joining. We'll talk same time next week.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
All right.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
everyone. Thanks.
Bye.
Thank you.
Well.